amazing for me. Take it away.
True love.
The night is good.
The demon Lilith transforms itself into an attractive adult seductress and enters the world with dark motives while elsewhere. An old lady named Sadie has a premonition of the incident but becomes too afraid to do anything. Lilith then starts an affair with Joseph Crenshaw, a senior editor of a fashion magazine called 𝐬𝐮, and asks him to put her on the cover, which he promises to think over. One night, Lilith shows up at Joseph's house and tries to seduce him. Despite wanting to keep their affair a secret, Joseph falls for his mistress's tricks and takes her to his marital bed while his wife is still sleeping in it. Joseph and Lilith start getting intimate, and soon after, Mrs. Crenshaw wakes up confused to see her husband having an affair right next to her. But before she can inquire what's going on, Lilith slits her throat and kills her. Joseph's young son is awakened by the commotion and runs to his parents' room to see what's going on, but is too scared by the gory scenes and runs back out. By the end of the night, Lilith murders the whole family and collects their souls. The next morning, news of Joseph's murder spreads to his office, shocking everyone. The publisher of the magazine, Rita, calls the staff for a meeting, officially informs them of the tragic news, but requests everyone should attend their international launch party, scheduled for later that night. Rod, Craig, and Ken, who were close friends with Joseph, are devastated by the news but agree to keep a brave face on. Later that night, the party goes full steam, and everyone agrees to attend in Joseph's memory. Ken and Rod attend the party together while Rod is escorted by his beautiful date. Rita then introduces her sister Kirsty, who is a talented jewelry designer, to Craig and Ken. Craig is mesmerized by Kirsty's beauty and starts flirting with her, and she responds in kind. Out of respect for their late colleague, everyone tries to have a calm evening until Lilith walks in dressed seductively and grabs everyone's attention. She slowly walks in while all the men stare at her and goes to the bar, where she meets Craig and Ken. Ken is totally immersed in Lilith and just starts following her around. Lilith tries to come in between Kirsty and Craig, but soon moves to the dance floor to dance alone, while Ken follows her and mimics her moves. Lilith gets on the pole, pretends to be a stripper, and keeps dancing while everyone stops everything they're doing as they can't help themselves but stare. Rod leaves his date and joins Lilith on the dance floor, ignoring Ken's opposition. Rod shocks everyone as he grabs Lilith and intimately dances with her, which angers his date and forces her to storm out of the party. After a few minutes, Rod and Lilith leave the party together to get some privacy, as Ken follows them closely behind. Lilith leads Rod to a hotel, and the two start getting intimate in the lobby, while Ken watches through the hotel's glass doors. Lilith then starts undressing and walking backward into a room where a light suddenly beams through, while at the same time, the glass doors break and severely injure Ken. Rod follows Lilith into the room. Lilith collects Rod's soul and disappears into the night. The next morning, Rita informs Craig of Rod's death, which devastates him, and adds that she's now the main suspect in the eyes of the police as she stands to inherit the fashion magazine after Joseph's death. Craig consoles the distraught Rita and promises to be there for her through the tough time ahead. In the afternoon, Craig goes through the party pictures and wonders who Lilith is and how she got invited. Then, Kirsty comes into the office and shows Craig her jewelry design collection. Craig is very impressed by the young girl's talent and promises to use it in the upcoming photo shoot. Craig and Kirsty hit it off and he asks her out on a dinner date. Later that night, as Craig leaves the office, he runs into Lilith, who comes in for an interview with Rita and informs her of Rod's death, which she nonchalantly brushes off. Craig then goes to the hospital to visit Ken, who is bedridden after sustaining a severe fracture to his leg. The two catch up a bit, but Ken goes into a seizure while remembering the night of the accident and Lilith's face. Later, Craig goes to Rita's place to pick up Kirsty and is dismayed to find Lilith there. Craig and Kirsty leave for their dinner and spend the rest of the night walking around the city before going back to Craig's place to talk and get to know each other better. Meanwhile, in Rita's place, Lilith seduces Rita and convinces the publisher to put her on the upcoming magazine cover. The next morning, as Craig gets to work, he is accosted by Sadie, who tries to warn him about Lilith but goes about it all in the wrong way. He brushes her her aside and gets inside to learn that Rita has discarded the cover photo they have already agreed upon and has scheduled a new photo shoot. Furious, Craig finds Rita in the middle of the photo shoot and questions her about the change in her decision. Rita, who seems to be in a daze, brushes off Craig's concerns and continues taking directions from Lilith on how to hold the shoot. Craig then tries to put Lilith in her place, but she discreetly unleashes her fury.
But you do not call the shots around here.
As Rita apologizes to Lilith, Craig checks on Kirsty to make sure she's okay and proceeds to take her home. As they leave the office, Sadie, who has been waiting for him all day, once again tries to approach him, but he warns her to get lost and drives away. Craig takes Kirsty to his apartment, and they spend the night together. During the night, Craig wakes up screaming from a vivid nightmare. Kirsty calms her boyfriend down and gives him a necklace made of an amethyst stone, which is reputed to ward off evil. The next day, Lilith's pictures are developed and apparently mesmerize anyone that lays eyes on them. Craig arrives at the office and is furious to learn that Lilith has no resume. He then collects her pictures and goes through them, hoping to filter them for publication. The office phone rings and awakens Craig from his trance. He finds himself confused, sweating profusely, and is shocked to realize that several hours have passed since he sat down with Lilith's pictures. He barely manages to pick up the phone to hear Kirsty panicking on the other side of it, telling him that Rita has kicked her out of her house. Craig asks to meet Rita in the nearest bar and drives out there. He arrives early and goes to the washroom to freshen up until Kirsty arrives. Lilith takes Kirsty's form and meets Craig before he can make it to the washroom and takes him out back. There he goes through a crowded room, which qualifies as a sample of hell. He passes through different individuals, engrossed in various questionable acts and sadistic behaviors. Meanwhile, Kirsty arrives at the bar, and as she waits for Craig, she is met by Sadie, who pulls her aside to tell her about Lilith and what she has done to her husband Louis years earlier. Back in the underworld, even though Craig is frightened, he seems powerless to leave the place and just keeps following the seductress. Finally, Lilith drops her disguise and faces Craig as herself. She starts to seduce Craig and proceeds to rip his heart out, but fails miserably. Craig barely manages to pull himself together, crawls back to the bar, and passes out, shocking Kirsty. Kirsty and Sadie carry him to the car and take him to Sadie's place. Craig regains consciousness a few hours later, to the relief of Kirsty, and drinks a concoction Sadie prepares for him. Sadie then explains that Craig was protected from Lilith's grasp by the amethyst, which represents Kirsty's true love for him. The old lady adds that the following night marks the 6th night of the dark moon, which means Lilith is at her strongest, that she will look to claim Craig's soul as she wants the soul of a man in love. Kirsty and Craig then think of Rita and rush out to help her with Sadie following them. The trio gets to the office and Sadie stays back, warning Kirsty not to let Craig out of her sight before allowing them to enter the office. Inside, the place is in quiet chaos as everyone sits in a trance in their own corner, mumbling inaudible warnings. Then, they get to Rita's office and find her surrounded by a group of men who excitedly present their ideas for the new issue of the magazine.
Agree?
Craig and Kirsty are horrified to make the discovery and slowly start to make their way out of the office. The staff, all under Lilith's spell, including the injured Ken, gangs up on them and chases them while threatening to kill them. After some exhausting chase, Craig and Kirsty lock themselves into a storage room and jump out of the window. Outside, Ken catches up with them, beats Craig up, and snatches Kirsty to put her in his car and drive away. Just as the rest of them gain ground on Craig, Sadie comes into her old car and rescues him. Sadie assures Craig that she knows where to look for Lilith and promises to help him find Kirsty. Meanwhile, Ken stops at a wooded area and proceeds to profess his love to Kirsty and to molest her. Kirsty uses a tire iron to stab Ken's injured leg and runs away into the forest while he screams in agony. He then collects himself and goes to look for Kirsty in the forest. On the other side, Sadie drives Craig to the forest, gives him a flashlight, takes her special dagger, and the two enter the woods. In the forest, Ken catches up with Kirsty, and just as he starts to assault her, Lilith appears. He stops everything and goes over to the demon professing his loyalty. Lilith uses her sharp nails to poke through the young man's body into his heart and refuel her body with his blood. Meanwhile, after traveling some distance, Sadie becomes exhausted, decides to stay back, gives the dagger to Craig, advising him to stab Lilith in the heart with it, and motivates him to rescue his love. He continues on his way and gets deep inside the forest, hoping to find a clue, while Kirsty runs on the other side of the forest and gladly stumbles upon Sadie. Sadie wishes Kirsty all the best and sends her on her way, right after which she collapses. Craig continues his desperate search through the woods. After the shocking discovery, Craig takes a minute to calm down and collect himself. Then, as he marches on through the woods, he sees Lilith from afar and discreetly walks up on her from behind. However, just as he attempts to stab Lilith with the dagger, she turns around and catches his hand. She throws the dagger away and proceeds to seduce Craig, who all of a sudden falls under her spell and goes along with it, even when she asks him to throw away the amethyst necklace. She then lays him down on the ground and proceeds to poke through his chest and grab his heart, while Kirsty comes running through the woods and stumbles upon the horror. Through the agony, Craig professes how much he loves Kirsty, which infuriates Lilith and changes her to her large and slimy demon form. The demon advances on the couple, looking to finish them once and for all. Luckily, Sadie, who has managed to crawl through the forest, arrives at the scene and discreetly grabs the special dagger. She then patiently waits until the right time and uses all her might to forcefully stab the demon in the heart. The old lady then burst into tears of gratitude as she prayed and thanked the Lord. Grateful to have survived together, the couple emotionally embraced each other. A few weeks later, Craig has a nightmare in which Lilith comes to life from one of the magazine's cover pictures and tries to attack him. The movie ends as Craig frantically wakes up, searches the room with his eyes, sees Lilith on the magazine cover, and becomes genuinely concerned as he can't tell the reality from the nightmare, and holds on to Kirsty, hoping everything will be alright. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.